In the heart of southeastern valleys, hidden behind hills thick with palm trees and red soil, lay the ancient village of Onuti. The people of Onuti lived with discipline and tradition. They poured libations to the gods, honored the spirits of the land, and never built past the sacred line drawn by their ancestors. But no matter how peaceful the village seemed, there was always a warning carried in whispers: do not forget Amadi. Children asked, who was Amadi? Old women looked away. The men stayed quiet. Only the griots dared say the name, softly, like smoke sleeping under a door. Amadi was once the greatest hunter Onuti had ever known. The strongest, the boldest, and the most foolish. The shrine at the village square still bore the mark of his story. But it wasn't a story told with pride. It was a wound. One that never fully healed. And it was beginning to bleed again. Amadi was born during a thunderstorm. They said the lightning clapped when he cried and the wind bowed when he slept. By 10, he killed a wild boar with a sharpened stick. By 15, he had defeated warriors from rival villages in wrestling. The people sang his name, Amadi the Brave, Amadi the Strong. The elders warned him, strength without humility invites downfall. But praise made him deaf. He refused the yearly cleansing. He mocked the priest during the yam festival. Why speak to the gods when I can kill a lion with one hand? Even the chief, who once saw Amadi as a son, began to worry. Pride is a silent fire, he said to the elders. It burns before we see the smoke. But Amadi walked taller each day, blind to the shadow behind him. A shadow that followed silently, watching, learning, waiting for the perfect time to strike. One cold morning, the wind stopped. Birds refused to sing. The chief called a gathering and sent for the oracle of Umuaka, a woman with silver-painted eyes and cowries on her tongue. She stepped into the village square barefoot, dragging her staff in the dust. The one with the lion's hands has turned his back to the spirits, she said. And now, the shadow stirs. People stared. Who is she speaking of? A boy asked. Everyone already knew. Amadi. The oracle continued, if the earth is not fed, the ground will swallow its own. And the child of Onuti will become the curse of Onuti. Amadi laughed. A curse. I've killed worse things in the forest. But even laughter can't silence fate. That night, the moon disappeared behind thick clouds, and the wind carried a sound no one could explain, whispers. From the forest. Calling his name. The next morning, Amadi's farm, once green and proud, was ash. The yams had withered overnight. His traps were snapped in half. His dog, a loyal hunter's companion, was found dead at the foot of the shrine tree with eyes wide open and tongue bitten through. Still, Amadi refused to kneel. He spat beside the shrine and said, if the gods want war, let them come. But they did not come in fire. They came in silence. At dusk, the shadow appeared. It started at the edge of the forest, a thick darkness that moved even when the wind didn't. It crept like smoke, slow and heavy. Cattle ran. Babies cried. By nightfall, the village knew something had changed. Children stopped playing. The drums stayed silent. The priest sealed the shrine. And from his hut, Amadi saw the shadow press against his doorway. Waiting. Not to enter, but to take. No one saw Amadi again after that night. The sun rose, the cock crowed, but his compound was quiet. His spear lay outside, untouched. His firewood untouched. His doorway half open. People gathered, whispering. Did he run? Was he taken? The elders sent 2 brave men to check. They entered his hut and came out pale. He's not gone, one said. He's changed. They refused to speak more. Soon, a strange mist began to rise every evening from the edge of the forest. Thick, black, and cold. Where it touched, crops failed. Where it lingered, animals died. And in the mist, if you listened closely, you would hear a voice. Low, ragged, calling, I am Amadi, but it wasn't human anymore. The shadow spread beyond Amadi's hut. Slowly, like spilled oil, frogs stopped croaking. Fireflies no longer lit the night. Wives miscarried. Men fell sick with no wounds. Elders dreamt of drowning in smoke. The land had turned its face away. The chief summoned the priests. They beat drums, poured libations, burned goat hair in the shrine. But the shadow remained. Some tried to leave the village. They returned within days, confused, dirty, and barefoot. This place is locked, the oracle whispered, by the same pride that cursed it. And still, every night, the mist crept in. And the voice came again, I am Amadi. One night, a child named Obioma, barely 7, stood outside the shrine. He had never spoken before, not a word since birth. But as the drums beat low, Obioma began to speak. In a voice not his own. Amadi is not dead. The priest gasped. He walks with the ones who have no names. The child pointed toward the forest. To find him, one must not carry pride. Then he collapsed. That night, the elders met in secret. Someone had to go into the forest to speak with what remained of Amadi, to end the curse. But who? No warrior volunteered. Not even the priest. But from the back of the gathering, a young girl stood. Nkem, 15. Barefoot. Come. She spoke with a steady voice. I will go. The elders laughed. What can a girl do where men have failed? But the oracle rose. The gods choose vessels, not muscles. Let her go. They gave her her grandfather's staff, tied a red cloth around her waist, and poured palm oil on her feet. You may not return, her mother whispered. I must, Nkem replied. Because if I don't, no one else will. And so she left, alone, into the forest that swallows names. The trees closed behind her. Birds stopped chirping. Even the wind held its breath. Nkem walked, staff in hand, heart in her throat. Every step into the forest felt like stepping into memory. The air smelled of wet earth, old blood, and something darker. Then she saw it. A clearing. Dead trees circled a giant black pit. And above it stood a figure. Tall. Thin. Wrapped in shadow. It turned. It was Amadi, but not the Amadi of songs. This Amadi had no eyes. No mouth. Just a hollow face that whispered every time it moved. You came to end me, it rasped. Nkem stood tall. No, she said. I came to remind you who you were. Amadi's shadow surged forward, snarling like a beast. The trees shook. The ground trembled. But Nkem did not move. She planted her feet, lifted the staff, and spoke, not with fear, but with remembrance. You were once the light of this village. You protected us. You fed the hungry. The land loved you. I am not that man anymore, Amadi's voice cracked, more wind than words. That's because you left your soul behind when you rejected your ancestors, Nkem said. The shadow circled her. Faces formed in the mist, warriors, hunters, children, all crying, all lost. They were the voices of those Amadi had led into darkness. You think your strength came from you? Nkem asked. It came from the land. From your people. From the spirits. The shadow faltered. For the first time in years, Amadi hesitated. Help me, he whispered. The forest paused. Nkem gripped her staff tightly. It was time to do the unthinkable. Nkem knelt and struck the earth 3 times with the staff. The ground answered with a deep hum. She began to chant in the tongue of the ancestors, words passed to her by her late grandfather, words she barely understood but felt in her bones. The shadow screamed. Faces vanished. The wind howled. Trees bent backward. Still, she kept chanting. Amadi clawed at his head, falling to his knees, shadow peeling off him like old skin. And then, a light. Not sunlight. Not fire. But a soft, golden light from beneath the earth. From Onyu, the spirit of the land. It rose between them, taking the form of a glowing woman with no eyes and no mouth, only presence. She touched Nkem's forehead, then turned to Amadi. "Do you yield?" Her voice echoed in every leaf. Amadi fell flat. "I was blind. I yelled." The shadow cracked, and silence fell. Real silence. Healing silence. Nkem opened her eyes to morning light. Birds sang again. Dew sparkled on leaves. The forest had changed, no longer heavy, no longer cursed. Amadi stood beside her, now a man again. Older. Weaker. But clean. His eyes filled with tears. "You gave me back what I threw away." Nkem didn't answer. She just began walking. Amadi followed. When they reached the village, people gathered in shock. Many wept. Some dropped to their knees. The oracle walked forward. "Is it done?" she asked. Nkem nodded. The oracle smiled faintly. "Then the earth will breathe again." Amadi turned to leave, but the chief stopped him. "You must remain," he said. "To rebuild what you broke." Amadi agreed. No titles. No songs. Just work. Nkem was carried to the shrine on shoulders. But she said nothing. She had seen too much. 3 days of fasting followed. Drums returned. The sacred tree was bathed in goat's milk. Elders poured libations, this time with salt and bitter leaf to cleanse pride and memory. Amadi sat outside the shrine, head bowed, silent. The oracle caught his hand and placed it on the tree. "May your blood feed what your pride poisoned." He did not flinch. Children gathered around him. "How did you do it?" "I didn't," she said. "The ancestors did." That night, they burned Amadi's former hut. A symbol that no man is above the gods. Smoke rose with the voices of the people. And the wind, for the first time in years, danced without carrying whispers. The elders begged Nkem to become the next oracle. She refused. "I do not need to wear white to be heard," she said. "I'll teach others what was almost forgotten." She opened a small school under the shrine tree, teaching not just letters and numbers, but stories, songs, rituals, and respect. She reminded the children daily, power is borrowed. Never owned. Never abuse it. Amadi became her gardener. Not as punishment, but as redemption. He watered the sacred grove each morning. And when asked why, he simply replied, "Because I once made the earth bleed. Now, I must help it grow." Many years passed. Nkem grew old, her hair white like moonlight. But every full moon, people gathered to hear her speak. She never read from scrolls. She spoke from memory. From heart. And when she told the story of Amadi's shadow, no one interrupted. Eyes widened. Mouth stayed shut. Even the night air seemed to hold its breath. And she always ended the same way. Onuti forgot once. And nearly died. But we remembered. And we lived. One day, Nkem slept and did not wake. They buried her under the sacred tree. Beside it, a stone was carved. "Here lies Nkem, the girl who walked into the shadow and brought back the sun." And when children pass by, they stop and ask, "Tell me again about Amadi." And the story begins once more. Because stories, real stories, never end. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.